This is the perfect time to talk about fighting fair, whether you're newly engaged or newly married. Our next guest says it's important to know how to argue the right way so that your marriage doesn't head in the wrong direction.
I love that. Bartlein is the People Pro. She's also an author, psychotherapist, and nurse. She wrote several books about marriage and relationships. Nice to have you on the show.
My pleasure.
I have to ask, does your husband ever crack up that we call you a marriage expert?
All the time. And in his position, just so you know, is I taught her everything she knows.
Oh, of course, of course.
Awesome.
Needs to take the credit. Well, when it comes to fighting, you know, is it a signal that things are working or a signal that things are going the wrong direction and you're not doing well as a couple?
Actually, the couples most likely to divorce are those that don't argue at all. Because that just shows they're pushing everything under the rug. They're not dealing with the issues. Arguing is not bad at all. It's how you argue.
So, arguing can be a sign of a healthy relationship.
Oh, absolutely. We argue all the time.
Why is that arguing is actually healthy?
Because it gets things out in the open, and you're talking about emotions, you're talking about feelings. You just have to do it fairly. You have to do it with respect, consideration for the other person. We'll even argue about the stupidest things. Like one of our arguments is, if you were abducted, would you want to be simply sucked up in a beam of light or taken by your chest? I take the beam of light approach myself. Charlie prefers the chest. This is something we've argued about, so it can be about anything.
That's hilarious.
Can you just get along? I mean, can people just never fight because they truly just agree on everything? Is that okay?
It's fine. I don't think it's realistic, Tiffany. Come on. We're going to argue about the temperature, how to pack the car.
Who leaves the towels on the floor.
Who leaves the towels on the floor, toilet seats. I mean, there's universal things couples argue about.
So what are the secrets then to fighting fair?
Well, first of all, you have to have rules. At our house, just to give you an example, some of the rules, we don't allow yelling.
Okay.
We don't allow door slamming.
What about name calling?
No. Except maybe under your breath when you walk away.
Right.
Oh, that's just worse.
When
you still said it.
Exactly.
Right. Another big one that we have found very helpful, we don't allow any museum pieces. None.
Okay.
What does that mean?
Explain that.
Museum pieces are things from the past.
Oh.
So, like in the heat of an argument, you can't say, well, remember 2 years ago you forgot you were late for a date or whatever. Those are museum pieces. And Charlie puts it well. He says, you know, we have plenty of new stuff to argue about without bringing things up from the past, so it works fine.
Yeah. And how do you set those rules? Do you kind of make an agreement as a couple? Here's certain things. Because one of the things that I think is a problem is if you're somebody who always walks away from an argument or leaves.
Shuts down. Those are people that are shutter downers.
Yeah.
And they walk away. It's okay to walk away, but you have to set a time to come back.
Okay.
So you have to say, you know what, I need to cool down, but at 2 o'clock, let's sit down, have a cup of coffee, we'll talk it out.
Okay, before I move on to that, is there anything you should do if somebody consistently breaks the rules?
Well, this is where commitment in a relationship comes in. If you're committed to that relationship, you need to be committed to work at it. And part of working at it is adhering to the rules. Now, one way to extinguish bad behavior, because we all possibly occasionally have some bad behavior, is I like to set up a jar and say, if you raise your voice, for example, you put $1 in the jar. You do some name calling, you put $1 in the jar. Our first year of marriage, we could fill up that jar pretty quick. Pretty quick. And then we'd take the money and we'd go out to dinner. So it worked. So, I mean, it comes down to commitment and really working on the relationship.
What about that expression where people say we never go to bed angry? Is it okay to ever go to bed mad?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I notice sometimes I'm upset with Charlie. I go to bed the next morning, I can't even remember what I was so mad about. A lot of times when people are really angry, they're fighting, they're arguing, it's because they're overtired. Go to bed. I don't know who made that rule. I totally disagree. You can go to bed mad.
I think that's a great. Somebody said that was the best. Remember on our Facebook page we asked what's the worst advice you got when you got married, and they said to always make up before you go to bed, and sometimes you just need to sleep on it. That's a good one. Lastly, are there some things that you'll just never agree on? Is it okay if you just never agree on certain things?
Absolutely. We call those perma arguments.
Okay.
You know, we're not going to agree. We can argue, we can bring statistics, we can bring fact sheets, we can do our internet searches, we can call up other people to come on our side. You know, all those techniques we do when we want to prove the point and who's right. But you know what? Sometimes you're just not going to agree.
Yeah.
And so what you do is you agree, we don't agree. We just are never going to agree on this. Let's put it to rest. There's certain subjects at our house we just don't discuss, like the president, because we don't agree. So why even go there?
Yep.
We're not going to agree.
Let it go. All right, here's how you find out more about Barb and her books. You go to thepeoplepro.com. Coming up, how to blend families at the wedding ceremony, especially if it's a second